In some breaking, but I don't know if it's really all that surprising news that came out today. Seth Gross has been entered into the transfer portal, meaning that he's likely to transfer from South Dakota State University. Just a reminder, he initially had committed to Iowa, was on the Iowa team, got kicked off, and I'll go into that story a little bit later after I get through this one. Went to South Dakota State, was a NCAA finalist at 133, lost to Corey Clark. Came back last year again in the finals. This time he won, and right now in the weight of 133, which is the deepest weight that there is all the year, and potentially maybe one of the deepest weights historically. Imagine how much deeper it would be if Seth Gross was not injured right now. Steven Miocic appears to be pulling out ahead of everybody right now as a number one seed, but Gross you'd have to figure would be ranked ahead of him. And also, unfortunately, there's been some injury issues with Drake Wilson, although I think he probably will be back at least in time to compete in nationals, but Gross won't. So by taking this injury red shirt, it looks as though he's electing, instead of returning to South Dakota State for his final year, that he'll be transferring out. So just to go through the story, it said national champ Seth Gross is under the transfer portal. Here's a tweet from Jason Bryant saying as much, saying two-time NCAA finalist wrestled his just one match this season, a pin over Josh Klein back in November. And then on the evening of January 17th, he confirmed he was out for the year. And it's unclear if he'll receive the sixth year of eligibility or not. It's also not clear what schools, if any, South Dakota State would potentially block him from transferring to. You would have to hope that with him being by winning the national title and like doing such a great thing for the program at South Dakota State, you'd figure that it'd probably be in their best interest to just kind of do him a favor and say, hey, look, we appreciate what you've done for the program. We prefer that you stay here, but if you really want to leave for one last year, then okay, we'll work with you. Hopefully that is how they'll handle it, but we have no idea. I don't know how Damian Hahn plans on dealing with this. They were also mentioning wrestlers who enter the transfer portal can remain at their school. Entering the portal does not mean the student athlete has to transfer. However, any student who enters the portal runs the risk of having their school change or outright cancel their scholarship package for the next school year. The program also does not reserve a spot on the roster for the athlete. As mentioned above, the Jackrabbit coaching staff and administration may still block Gross from transferring to certain schools. However, they cannot block him from speaking to other coaching staffs. And again, as far as South Dakota State is concerned, it's not as though they have a bunch of high-profile guys on their roster right now. Lost a few guys when Chris Bono went over to Wisconsin. It looks as though, if we're guessing, that it would make a lot of sense for Seth Gross to go to Wisconsin and follow Bono there. He's had a lot of success under Chris Bono. If you're going to go one final year, why not go with Chris Bono? People are talking about him potentially going to Penn State, where the idea would be that next year he could either be there 133 and RBY could move down to 125, or RBY could just take the red shirt next year while Seth Gross takes the 133 spot. So there are some high-profile colleges that he can go to where he has a chance of winning a team title, but it seems as though all signs tend to be pointing towards him going to Wisconsin just because that's where Chris Bono's at, and that would make a lot of sense. But to get to that story of his other transfer, and just to kind of go through his career, he was a three-time national freestyle champion in high school, committed to the University of Iowa. But here's the story of why he got kicked off. And what's really unfortunate here, and I guess maybe you could say unfortunate or maybe even fortunate, because a lot of times you feel like the better athletes tend to get preferential treatment. And to an extent, I mean, it's kind of understandable. You kind of do have a looser standards with the guys who are going to do more for your program than guys who aren't. But in this situation, he ends up getting tied up with a couple other teammates who weren't as high profile of recruits as he was, them being Logan Ryan and Ross Lembeck. So unfortunately for Iowa, if you did want to kind of give him a little more slack here, you'd also have to give the same slack to the other two, and that wasn't something they were willing to do. So the issue is that the three were arrested on alcohol-related charges on March 18th of 2015 after Marion, which is Marion and Cedar Rapids are right next to each other in Iowa. It's kind of like a Coralville and Iowa City are also right next to each other. But Cedar Rapids is about 30 minutes out from Iowa City, so it's kind of right in that general area. But they were arrested on charges March 18th in Marion after officers responded to a call for a theft in progress in Hunters Ridge neighborhood. Police said at the time the burglary and theft charges were pending. Brands had previously suspended all three wrestlers indefinitely on March 23rd. So the date on this article is May 4th of 2015. So they were suspended towards the end of the year, sort of during the time when Big Tens and Nationals would be going on. And then later on, after about a month, it looks like they decided to cut them loose. So from that moment, these guys all kind of went their own separate ways. but Seth Gross ended up getting picked up by South Dakota State, where it's sort of like a last chance for him. Chris Bono showed some faith in him and ended up obviously bringing him to 2 national championship finals and winning one of them, and being a guy who's a favorite to get to a third once he does come back, assuming that he's allowed to come back next year. But if he was healthy this year, he'd have to be favored to make it to the finals as well, although that'd be a tough road because 133 is so deep. But either way, as far as where he's going to go from here, I think it's pretty safe to say that it makes a lot of sense for him to go to Wisconsin. You can make cases why other schools work. I don't think Oklahoma State makes a whole lot of sense because they have Dayton Fix at 33. Iowa doesn't make much sense because Austin DeSanto is at 133. I don't know how he feels about the Brands brothers anyway for kicking him off the team. I don't know if he would feel like it's a shot at redemption to go back to Iowa or not. But at this point, with DeSanto doing so well and being a top 3 guy in the nation, it doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense for Iowa to bring Seth Gross in, even if he has a slight upgrade from DeSanto for a year. I don't see them doing that. So Wisconsin to me is the one that makes the most sense. Penn State, I mean, they're just way ahead of everybody if they can get him, but it seems to me that he's got a good relationship with Chris Bono. He really appreciates what Bono did for him in a time when he was down after he got kicked off Iowa's team. So for him to go to Wisconsin would make a whole lot of sense, and I think that's what he's going to do.